It's a subject I tend to avoid reporting too much on the channel and I tend to avoid reading about, to be honest, in the press, because Declan Rice always and his future at West Ham is always seems to be doing its rounds in the press and has been now for quite some time. This year it's going to be even more so because of the fact that he's got 2 years left on his deal when he comes this summer. West Ham are really in a position now where holding the cards, and if we're going to sell him, which is looking the case, then this summer's the most likely time we're going to do that. We've known that throughout, everyone's kind of known that for quite some time. I've not really wanted to accept it. I've been hoping the fact that the situation would change, but it appears that it's not going to. So some things now, I think we all kind of reluctantly now accept as fans. We accept the fact that this summer, Declan is likely to leave the club. I think we all kind of agree with that. Most of us anyway. The big thing that's come out the last week or so, however, is that Declan has apparently got a gentleman's agreement with Arsenal, and he will be going to them this summer. Now, first of all, I don't really. All I would say to every fan out there, now I've been speaking to people like X, who's obviously well in the know of what's going on and knows the sort of situations and kind of knowing these sort of how these things pan out. I've always been kind of told not to take too much notice of that stuff. But I would say that really irked me when I saw that, because I thought, I really hope that's not true, because the last thing West Ham need is a player of his stature agreeing to go to another club. We had it previously, if you remember, with Payet, with Marseille and all that kind of stuff. It just doesn't help him saying, that's the only place I want to go, that I've made my agreement. And it makes life very, very difficult for West Ham, because effectively we can't create the bidding war that we need, because that's going to be how we get the most money for Declan, let's be honest, is if we've got teams competing for his signature. So that was the top story. The story was that Deck had an agreement with Arsenal and he'd be going there this summer. So that's now been claimed. Well, X has now come out and stated that that's not true, that Declan has no agreement with Arsenal. It's simply not true. It's paper talk. And the fact that actually all the options are still very much open for Declan Rice. That includes, of course, staying with West Ham. I don't believe that's ever going to happen, personally. I think it's made it quite clear that he does want to move on. Look, Declan, at the end of the day, has been very good about the whole thing. I mean, I know some fans are a bit irked by certain things he said previously, especially when he was away at the World Cup. But ultimately, he's led well. We've had him for a long period of time, theoretically, when he could have left a lot sooner. And also, what I've seen of Declan in his matches, he always gives his all, always seems to be fully committed to West Ham. So, ex-WHU employee now has released the news on the situation with Arsenal and explained where we are with it. So, I'm just going to quick read that out now. So, X has stated that reports that Captain Declan Rice has a gentleman's agreement in place to join Arsenal is untrue. Whilst Arsenal are said to be one of the front runners in signing the England international, there is no agreement. And at this point, all options are open. So what it does tell you then is, one, there's no agreement, which is excellent news for West Ham, and rightly so. There shouldn't be any agreement as far as I'm concerned. I don't like the idea that they're having conversations and agreeing things at this stage. We don't need that. We want Declan fully committed. So I'm glad that that's now come out that that's been rubbish, that it's not true. What it does tell us, though, is that Arsenal are still a front runner. Although you do kind of imagine that once the likes of Manchester City, who I imagine would want to go in for Declan Rice, that's just my guess, especially with the way things have worked out with Calvin Phillips today, you'd imagine they might want to get somebody else in. Once they show their hand, I imagine they're going to show that, flex their financial muscle if they do want Declan. Then you've got the likes of Chelsea and also clubs from abroad. So I'm pleased with that. I'm actually quite happy with that and quite content with that news. So the next statement is kind of what I've sort of alluded to in terms of where we are as fans. And this is like quite sad to read this bit for me, really. But it is obviously it's sad because it's the truth and it's kind of what we know, but it's just horrible hearing it. Whilst it is accepted in West Ham circles, Declan will be moving on in the summer. The player wants to do his best for the club to get the club as far up the table as possible and hopefully achieve a successful cup run in either the FA Cup or the Conference League. So that's where we are with that. It's painful. At the end of the day, whatever happens here, losing Declan Rice is going to be painful. We know that. I'm dreading it. We're all dreading it. I'm really hoping he doesn't go to a London rival. That's just my personal feeling. And the reason just because I'd rather him go somewhere else. I'd rather see him go to Man City. That's my else's preference, or abroad. That's my general preference. But it is what it is. It's something we just have to accept. all I can say is that I'm pleased to hear that there's no agreement in place with Arsenal. I'm glad that the bidding war can still happen this summer, because we need that. We need Declan's. I mean, I imagine that West Ham will start the bidding at, let's say, £80 million, and hope that they'll start outbidding each other to get us to the 100 or whatever it is that we're sort of hoping to get from him or for him. Yeah, it's a horrible situation. I don't really like talking about it. We don't really like reporting on this channel. We don't really like reporting it too much in the West Ham way, to be perfectly honest, because it's something that just seems to do the rounds all the time. Everyone talks about it, and there's always a speculation. So my advice to West Ham fans listening to this, and I've been given this advice from the people that I work for, is that just try and ignore it. Don't take too much notice, because he's a very, very highly regarded footballer. You know, not only for West Ham, but in the Premier League, around the world, he's really, really highly regarded as one of the best in his position. So, unfortunately, papers are going to continually try to churn up stories to sell them. So Declan is, and he's a sellable name now. So it's best sometimes to take everything with a pinch of salt, and that's what we should have done with the Arsenal news. As I say, I read it and was a bit annoyed. Then sometimes you stand back. I spoke to a couple of people and then realised, okay, it's probably not true. And then thankfully, it's been proven that's not the case. So overall, I would say we're in a better position now. I actually think it's positive news. I like the idea Declan is fully committed to West Ham. This is his number one focus, and rightly so. He's our captain. It should bloody well be. But also, I'd like the idea that he's not committed to Arsenal. He is open. All his other options are available to him. Declan Rice, it's quite clear, is a player that wants to do very well for himself in terms of winning, being successful. And let's be honest, you can't blame him. We need to remember as fans that Declan isn't a West Ham fan. He loves the club. There's no two ways about it that he absolutely adores West Ham. But ultimately, he knows where he stands in the football world. He knows he's really up there with the best and should be playing with the best. It's only right that he wants to be challenging for Champions Leagues and Premier League titles. It's something West Ham can't offer. We just have to accept it. I think ultimately what we want to do as a football club, one, let's turn this season around and get ourselves into a better position. Let's go and win the Conference League. These are the things we should be focused on, and that's what Declan should be focused on. I believe that is the case. That is what he's focused on. And then secondly, when it comes to the summer, Declan's made his decision. He does want to move on. If that is the case, I mean, things could change. I doubt it, but things could change. But let's just say he does want to go, then we get the right money for him. He allows us to put him onto the market and see what happens. And then we all wish him all the very best, and then move on onwards and up as a football club, and then also have another 90 to 100 million pounds to spend on the transfer kitty to add to it that we would spend. So these aren't terrible things. These aren't it's not great, but it's not terrible. And ultimately, it's not that bad. And let's just be pleased the fact that there's no agreement in place of Arsenal at this stage, and there shouldn't be, and which is quite right. And that Declan is fully committed to West Ham.